one of the things that came up that you mentioned is like, why do women even get breast cancer? And I think that's an important thing just to mention is that premenopausal women who get breast cancer, it's usually due to some sort of chemical exposure, an endocrine disruptor that interferes with the normal hormone receptors, so that it's basically poisoning the systems of the body that are designed to protect against breast cancer. And I think women should know that the menstrual cycle, which has been maligned, like try to get rid of it, because so many women have dysfunctional menstrual cycles, whether they're irregular, they're too painful, too heavy. And so the goal is always get rid of the darn thing because it's more trouble than anything else. And you only want to have a menstrual cycle when you want to ovulate to have a baby, otherwise get rid of it. But it turns out that nature actually put in some anti-cancer benefits to a menstrual cycle. When a woman has an ovulatory cycle, just before she ovulates, she has a huge spike of estradiol. Estradiol is the estrogen made by the ovaries. There's this giant spike. It goes up like 3 times the previous level, but just for a day, and then it dips down, and then it slowly gets back up again, but not to that same height, just higher. And that's the second half of the luteal phase. But that giant spike of estrogen that precedes ovulation, it triggers the LH or luteinizing hormone spike, and then ovulation. That giant spike of estrogen actually activates tumor suppressor genes that actually help prevent cancer. And when you have the peak of progesterone in the second half of luteal phase of the menstrual cycle, that too turns on tumor suppressor genes. And when you purge the uterine lining and you have the period, that actually is causing other cells in the body that are maybe precancerous or yucky, senescent old cells to kill themselves. We call that internal purging. That's called programmed cell suicide or apoptosis. So we actually have mechanisms in our body that are triggered by the menstrual cycle to lower the risk of breast cancer. And it's like an amazing kind of a thing. And the cycle of turning on and off receptors, like up and down regulating them and so on, are all very part of nature's way of not having cancer. So it's just an amazing thing. But if you get rid of the cycle and you don't have those peaks of progesterone, the spike of estradiol, then that in itself is increasing the risk of cancer. And chemicals, we live in a world of chemical endocrine disruptors, that the ones that are called xenoestrogens, they're not estrogen, they're chemicals that can bind to estrogen receptors or in some way interfere with the production, the receptor binding, the degradation, the elimination of estrogen. And so it creates this chemical imbalance in the body. And estrogen, which is a life hormone, one of the things it does is it causes growth. In the uterine lining, it causes proliferation or growth of the uterine lining. Now, growth doesn't mean everything's getting bigger. Growth can also mean repair, rejuvenation, replacement, okay? So the growth factors that are essential for healing wounds, okay? If you have an injured part of the body, the healing process is triggered by estrogen to activate platelets, to create growth factors and healing and new blood vessels. But what happens if a woman has an estrogen receptor positive cancer, which could be in the uterine lining, endometrial, or breast, like we're talking about breast cancer. A lot of them have estrogen receptor positivity. The breast cancer like hijacks the estrogen in the body. It's a fascinating thing. If you have an estrogen receptor positive breast cancer in the breast, it actually triggers the surrounding cells surrounding the cancer to start making estrogen. The estrogen is made in the breast tissue, and it's in highest concentration in terms of its production right next to the breast cancer. Wow. It's nature's way of a cancer. It's not like nature's good way. It's like hijack nature. It's really hijacking the natural goodness of nature to make estrogen locally in the breast tissue to actually serve to grow the breast cancer and create new blood vessels. We call angiogenesis, new blood vessels to feed and nurture that breast cancer. That is estrogen that's being made in the breast as a result of the breast cancer. The estrogen didn't cause the breast cancer. The estrogen is being produced locally as a result and because of the breast cancer. Now, if you have other estrogen in the body, then it may also contribute in a smaller degree, but also contribute to the growing of that breast cancer. But the estrogen didn't cause the breast cancer. Breast cancer is caused by inflammation. All cancers are inflammation. Now, what causes the inflammation is often these endocrine disruptors, these chemicals that interfere with the normal mechanisms of the body's ability to maintain what we call metabolic homeostasis, maintain just everything working smoothly. And when you have inflammation, you develop DNA instability. And that can lead to things called misfolded proteins and so on. And then you have fracture or breakage of DNA, and then you have cancer. And that's due to inflammation. And there can be more than one cause of inflammation. So if you have metabolic poor health, for example, you have diabetes, you have obesity, you have malnutrition, nutrient deficiencies, and most people who are obese are actually also malnourished, okay? You can have dysbiosis of your gut, fatty liver, you can have chronic emotions like chronic stress and emotions. So anything and everything that causes chronic inflammation can lead to the DNA instability, breakage. And then once the cancer forms, and it happens genetically to be estrogen receptor positive, it creates its own estrogen source, and it will hijack any circulating estrogen to try to also support its growth and its integrity. But it wasn't caused by estrogen. Yeah. What I would say is it was caused in spite of the estrogen, because estrogen in the form of estradiol made by the ovary actually maintains balance in the body, and it creates the immune system, or it controls the immune system so that it doesn't create inappropriate inflammation. You only want inflammation when you have damage or a pathogen like a bacteria, a virus invading the body. Otherwise, you want to have this calmness. You don't want inflammation. Estrogen turns on and the off switch for inflammation. But you can have systems that become out of control due to all these other factors. And then you have this unrelenting inflammation, which can be anywhere in the body, including in the breast, that leads to this cancer formation. So it's really important not to blame an innocent bystander, so to speak.
Yes.
Kind of like Stockholm syndrome, where they kidnap someone and then they brainwash them to work with the criminals. That's kind of what happens to poor estrogen. But it was innocent until it was hijacked and kidnapped.
You're right. The message here, really, if you guys haven't heard it yet, estrogen does not cause cancer. Okay, period. There are so many other reasons. Yeah, and we just went through that. Control and manage the inflammation if you're worried about that. So I have so many more questions for you, and it's already wrapped up for an hour. I
just want to throw out two things. Okay, one, a thermogram. It measures inflammation, because we talk about inflammation. So it measures heat, which is a product of inflammation. I wish it were, but it isn't a detection device for breast cancer. It's a detection for inflammation. And then you have to do with that what you will. But usually, if you have a lot of inflammation, then you just are told to get a mammogram. And if you don't, it doesn't mean you can't have breast cancer. So it is what it is. There is work underway now for a very high resolution type of ultrasound that may turn out to be a good detector of breast cancer. And that doesn't mean that it will detect it any differently than a mammogram will detect it. But here's the good thing. There's no radiation, okay? And you're not pancaking the breast. So I will take that as an advancement, okay? If we don't do any better than a mammogram, but we take out the radiation, no, hallelujah, I'm still happy for that. I don't want anyone to think that I'm saying that no one should have a mammogram. I just want them to have knowledge and informed consent and understand the way breast cancer actually works, and that the very original premise just happened to be wrong. I wish it were right, but it just wasn't.
Yeah, I'm really sad that with the advancement of mammograms that they're increasing the radiation. You would think they would try to reduce it. And the message I'm getting, and perhaps many women listening too, is get your mammogram every year. It saves lives, early detection, and it's not all completely false, but I think we need to really take a bigger step towards improving the detection, understanding, and having that discussion with your doctors. I really think we're really talking about a healthy woman.